Hello and welcome to Mountain Mode, Vintage Technology. Today in this episode we're going to take a look at this 1940s navigation flight computer from the RAF. I'm really excited about this thing. It's a really great piece of history and technology at the time, and I'm excited to show you guys just a little bit more of what this is and how it works. By the way, this video is dedicated to you, Dad. Happy birthday. Hope that you have a great day. So my dad picked up this quite a few years ago now at a flea market in South Africa. And when he showed it to me and when he gave it to me to keep, he suggested that a video on how this thing works would be really interesting, and I hope that it will be. Flight planning today is, let's be honest, pretty simple. You go to a computer, open up whatever flight planning software you use, click your route, hit update on the winds, and you're pretty much going to get all the data you need. There may be a little bit of thinking just to make sure you have considered everything and double check the data, but that's pretty much all there is to it. There's a tendency with that kind of flight planning to not really give too much thought to things, especially if you're doing a route very often. All that you pretty much do is get it planned out, print it out, and off you go. So this thing is pretty similar to an E6B, although it's an older version and it works in a much more interesting way. Let's dive into how this thing actually works and just some of the really interesting ways that it's been designed. So something like this is common, and it should still be used in flight training today. On the one side you've got a flight computer where you can work out time, speed, distance, fuel burn, all of that important stuff. And on the flip side you've got some kind of computer that will help you to work out your wind correction and your ground speed. But I'm not really interested in this today. What I'm interested in is using this. Picking this thing up, it's got some heft to it. This is made of metal and steel and a little bit of plastic on it, but pretty much this thing is a solid piece of gear. And it's, you know, from the 1940s, and this thing is still holding up. I imagine this was used during the war and was probably carried along to various countries and continents, and it is still in relatively good condition. Again, on the one side you've got a course and speed calculator. This is basically a pretty simple version of a time, speed and distance calculator. And on the other side is where the magic really happens. On this side you've got some kind of mechanism here with a lot of different moving parts that will allow you to work out your ground speed and your drift correction based on the wind. So once we've got our map, what we'll need to do is figure out where we're going, figure out the distance and the direction for those before we can start to make any calculations. So what I'm interested in today is how do we use this thing, and is it possible to use this within a modern context? Its primary use, its primary function is as a pre-flight tool. This is a tool that you use before you fly, figuring out based on the forecast winds and your route that you've got planned, what your correction angles are going to be, and what your ground speed is going to be. So first of all, what we'll need is some raw data to plug into this to be able to get our correction angles and our ground speed. What we would need is two things. First of all, our planned true airspeed. The second thing would be our true course that we've plotted. Of course, then we will also need the forecast wind. Take a look at what our local weather forecasting says. At altitude, we would see what wind information they're given us there. I imagine during the time that they used these in the war, they probably had a way of distributing that information to the different pilot or air wings. And to some degree, you do need some kind of a forecast wind to plug into this. So what I've got today is a course that I've worked out from Maseru to Tabatseka. And the true course there that I've figured out is 110 degrees. So my true course is planned at 110 degrees. The wind that I've got for this altitude I've chosen is 115, so 11,500 foot. The wind that I'm getting from that 270 at 30 knots. Okay, and my true airspeed that I've calculated for the day, 110 knots. Okay, so with that information I should be able to plug a few things in here and see what it gives us. At the top here we've got some red markers and some white. We're looking at the red for knots, and if you grab this mechanism here, it allows you to slide this up and down. What we're looking to do is set this pointer at our planned true airspeed, so 110. Okay, the next thing we've got this plastic thing, which we for now just get out of the way. And we've got a couple things here. We've got a compass rose around the side with all these different markings, and we've got this thing. Now this little peg here, if you push it down, actually slides, and for now we want to slide it all the way to the outside. What we're going to do is we'll set our wind direction. So we said the wind was 270, so I need to slide this inner part, it's pretty stiff, but slide that so that this line is at 270. Next we're going to set the peg to the wind speed. So we're going to slide this peg, looking at knots on the right hand side, to 30. We said our wind was 270 at 30, and we've got this set 270 at 30. At this point we can go ahead and slide this back on, and now using this little course indicator at the top, we're going to turn this to the course that we're flying. So for me, my course was 110. So what I've now got is a correct result for this calculation. I can read off my drift angle. If you take a look at that small marker at the top there, it gives me my drift angle, and on the knot scale here I can read what my ground speed is going to be, 140 knots. Let me use a different example so you can see how this will work. Now that I've got my wind plugged in, if I change my heading, or my course rather, it's just working that out for me as I go. So if I now turn onto a heading of 210, I don't need to recalculate anything. I've got a new drift angle there, and I've got a new ground speed here. My ground speed is now 100, and my drift angle is about 15 degrees port drift, which means my correction is going to be the opposite of that, 15 degrees starboard. So what's really cool about this is that once you have that initial wind speed plugged in and you change your heading, you don't need to redo anything with the wind. You just move your course. If your TAS happens to change, you can just make a small adjustment for that. But this computer is going to just keep working out for you what your headings are going, or what your ground speed and your drift directions are going to be, whichever way you decide to fly. How about the other side though? This side is a very basic time, speed, distance calculator. So what you would do is, once you've done your pre-flight planning and you're now en route, you'd probably mark out a couple of places along the way that you would want to do a kind of a checkpoint at, and that's where this side of the calculator is going to come in handy. Let's say we did, for example, 6 miles in 3 minutes. So we align the 6 and the 3 there. We go to our red marker indicator here, and we read off 120 knots. Okay, so that would be a way to adjust and correct your ground speed en route. If you know the distance between two places and you know your time, then it would be very easy to get your new and revised or updated ground speed from that. Well, that's it for today. Thanks very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed something a little different, and hopefully something that's real interesting. I guess if there's anything we could conclude from today, it would be that maybe sometimes kind of stepping back into the old way of flight planning will force you to slow down, to think through your route, and to make sure that you're having a big picture, a spatially, having a kind of a big picture view of your flight that you're about to do. And I think that when you have to really sit down and take some significant time in your planning, you become a lot more prepared and a lot more ready for the flight. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.